Lewis Hamilton stepped out of the Ferrari SF-26 after preseason testing, looked his engineer in the eyes, and said something that could decide the entire championship. Not after a race. Not after a pole position. After testing. And here's the part no one is talking about. Ferrari just completed more than 4,000 kilometers without a single major failure. They hit over 345 kilometers per hour on the straight. They showed qualifying pace that insiders are calling terrifying. But Hamilton didn't celebrate. He delivered a warning. Because hidden inside Ferrari's fastest car in years is a weakness that could destroy their season in races like Miami, Hungary, and Singapore. And what he told his engineer reveals exactly where this title fight will be won or lost. Stay until the end, because that final message changes everything. And if you care about this championship battle, subscribe now, because this season is about to explode. Ferrari did not go to Bahrain to impress. They went to measure. Barcelona had been controlled. Quiet. Almost secretive. Engine modes turned down. Fuel loads unclear. No headline times. More than 1.5 seconds of real pace, hidden. And that wasn't an accident. Because inside Maranello, they knew something the paddock did not. The SF-26 was built around a completely new energy philosophy. 50% combustion. 50% electric deployment. That balance sounds simple. It isn't. Get it wrong, and you either overheat the battery, destroy rear tires, or lose speed at the end of every straight. And when Ferrari arrived in Bahrain, they finally removed the mask. Wednesday morning. Track temperature rising. Engine mapping closer to race configuration. And suddenly, the car looked different. Not just fast. Stable. Calm through high-speed corners. No nervous rear. No visible corrections from the drivers. Charles Leclerc set a lap that forced engineers from other teams to stop pretending. But here's what most people missed. It wasn't only the lap time. It was the way the Ferrari carried electrical deployment all the way to the braking zone. No early power drop. No conservative clipping. Full push. That detail alone sent a signal through the paddock. Because in this new era, electrical management is the championship. And Ferrari's 067/6 power unit looked comfortable. Cool temperatures. Clean data. Zero mechanical drama. Across testing, they completed the equivalent distance of 14 race weekends. Without a major failure. That is not normal in a regulation reset year. That is strategic confidence. But while the headlines focused on straight-line speed and qualifying simulations, Lewis Hamilton was focused on something else entirely. Braking feel. Rear stability. Torque delivery on corner exit. Because he understood something deeper. One lap pace wins Saturday. Thermal control wins Sunday. And this is where the story begins to split. On short runs, the SF-26 is explosive. Manual energy override allows maximum battery discharge in one attack lap. It is devastating. But over longer stints, when the asphalt climbs past 40 degrees Celsius, the data begins to shift. Battery temperatures creep toward their limit. Rear tire surface temperatures spike. And Hamilton feels everything. He reported subtle clipping in extreme heat. Not dramatic. Just enough to matter. Enough to change overtaking opportunities. Enough to decide a race by tenths. And that is where the internal conversations became intense. Because Ferrari built a weapon. But Hamilton wants endurance. He wants a car that dominates for 70 laps. Not just one. And what happened in the garage after the final session starts to make a lot more sense when you understand that tension. Because the speed is real. The reliability is real. The qualifying potential is terrifying. But the operating window is narrow. And widening that window may decide whether this Ferrari becomes legendary or fragile under pressure. But the real tension didn't happen on track. It happened inside the cockpit. Because while the outside world saw a fast Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton was fighting something invisible. The brake-by-wire system. In this new regulation cycle, front axle energy regeneration is massive. Under braking, the car is not just slowing down. It is harvesting. Aggressively. And when regeneration increases, pedal feel changes. Pressure builds differently. Release feels different. And for a driver whose entire legacy is built on late braking precision, that is not a small adjustment. On the first day in Bahrain, Hamilton's radio messages were calm, but pointed. Inconsistent pedal. Rear moving under heavy regen. Short phrases. Measured tone. But loaded with meaning. Most drivers would adapt. Lewis did something else. He stayed. Late into the evening. Helmet off. Data screens glowing. Engineers around him. He went corner by corner. Entry phase. Mid-rotation. Exit torque. He asked for torque remapping on corner entry. He asked for differential adjustments under regenerative braking. He asked for smoother electric deployment just before throttle application. Not because the car was bad. Because he saw what it could become. And in the final 48 hours of testing, it transformed. Friday afternoon. Long-run simulation. Track temperature dropping slightly as the sun moved lower. And suddenly, the Ferrari rotated differently in slow corners. Sharper front. More controlled rear. Hamilton began using regenerative braking as a tool, not just a system. He could pivot the car mid-corner using controlled energy harvesting. That is advanced driving. That is adaptation at elite level. And here's where it becomes even more interesting. Charles Leclerc is naturally aggressive on entry. But this technique requires patience, precision, and timing. Insiders noticed something subtle on the final day. Leclerc's rear suspension setup changed. Closer to Hamilton's configuration. That is not coincidence. That is influence. The internal balance of the garage is shifting. Not dramatically. Not publicly. But technically. And when a team begins shaping the car around one driver's feedback, that tells you who they believe can deliver under pressure. But even with that progress, one issue refused to disappear completely. Heat. When the track temperature climbed above 30 degrees Celsius, the Ferrari behaved like two different cars. Below that threshold? Surgical. Above it? Sensitive. Rear instability under wind. Thermal battery management tightening deployment windows. Hamilton described it privately as a diva. Beautiful when treated correctly. Unforgiving when conditions shift. And that is dangerous in a championship fight. Because Australia might be cool, but Miami will not. Hungary will not. Singapore will not. And that is exactly why the final message he gave after testing carries so much weight. He is not chasing the fastest single lap. He is chasing resilience. Because he knows Red Bull's advantage is not headline speed. It is race control. Linear degradation. Predictability. Ferrari has built something explosive. But championships are not won with explosions. They are won with control. And as preseason testing ended, Hamilton understood something most fans still don't. The SF-26 is not incomplete. It is concentrated. All its brilliance exists inside a narrow window. And widening that window, without losing the raw edge, may be the single hardest engineering challenge on the grid right now. And if Ferrari solves it quickly, this season changes completely. But if they don't, that unexpected message in the garage will start to sound less like optimism, and more like a warning. Now here's where everything connects. Because while the technical discussion focused on batteries, torque curves, and rear degradation, something else was happening in plain sight. Reliability. In a year of radical regulation change, reliability is usually fragile. New hybrid balance. New aerodynamic philosophy. More aggressive active rear wing behavior. And yet Ferrari completed the equivalent of 14 full race weekends without a major mechanical failure. No blown engines. No hydraulic breakdowns. No dramatic stoppages. Just one minor software issue on Hamilton's steering display, fixed in minutes. That changes the psychology inside a team. Because when engineers trust the hardware, they push the limits of the software. And Ferrari has something very few teams currently possess. Confidence. But confidence can be dangerous. Because the SF-26 is not just fast in a straight line. It introduced one of the most aggressive active rear wing interpretations on the grid. On straights, the main plane rotates almost 90 degrees, reducing drag dramatically. Lewis hit over 345 km per hour during testing. That is not accidental speed. That is engineered intent. The governing body inspected it multiple times, declared it legal. And that legal innovation explains something critical. Ferrari is not playing safe this year. They are playing bold. But bold concepts create narrow margins. And narrow margins demand precision. Which brings us back to race simulations. On Friday's longer runs, Hamilton experienced performance drop around lap 12 on the soft compound. Red Bull, by comparison, extended their stint several laps further before similar degradation. That difference may sound small. It isn't. For laps of tire life at race pace can determine strategy flexibility, undercut potential, defensive positioning. And here's the deeper layer most viewers miss. When Ferrari asked Hamilton to manage temperatures, they required significant lift and coast. Earlier braking zones. Earlier throttle lift. Up to 600 meters before certain corners in peak heat conditions. And Lewis said something that reveals his mindset. This feels like endurance racing. That is not frustration. That is analysis. He understands efficiency. But he refuses to compromise competitive identity. He does not want to defend. He wants to attack. And attacking requires thermal headroom. Now think about what that means. Ferrari has built a car capable of explosive qualifying dominance. Possibly the fastest single-lap machine on the grid. They have reliability. They have straight-line speed. They have braking confidence after adjustments. But to unlock championship potential, they must smooth the torque delivery, improve rear tire thermal stability, expand the operating window in hot conditions. And here's the strategic twist. There are rumors of a revised floor and modified diffuser package arriving in Melbourne. Subtle cooling refinements. Minor aerodynamic balance tweaks. Not revolutionary upgrades. Refinements. And if those refinements extend tire life by even 2 laps per stint, everything shifts. Because suddenly, Ferrari's qualifying superiority translates into track position. Track position reduces tire stress. Reduced stress widens the operating window. And the weakness becomes manageable. That is the domino effect Hamilton sees. That is why his message was not emotional. It was surgical. This car has my DNA. Widen the window. He is not doubting the project. He is directing it. And that distinction matters more than any testing headline. Because this is no longer about whether Ferrari built a fast car. They did. The question now is whether they can evolve it quickly enough to survive a 20-plus race calendar. Heat, wind, street circuits, high degradation tracks, pressure. And if you connect every branch of this story, the energy system, the braking adaptation, the rear suspension influence, the aggressive rear wing concept, the thermal sensitivity, it all leads to one central truth. Ferrari is closer than they have been in years. But being close is dangerous. Because when expectations rise, pressure multiplies. And the next time Lewis Hamilton steps out of that car, it will not be after testing. It will be after a real race, under real consequences. And that is when we will truly understand what that unexpected message meant.